Okay, well, something I know this is kind of going to be kind of a bit of a silly video, but a speculation. Well, first off, I know the F-35 would fly circles around this thing below 50,000 feet. I don't think the F-35 will make it to 75,000 feet. At that altitude, I'm sure the Arrow will probably do better. But again, that's a high altitude, go fast, long range interceptor. But was it long range? Was it short range? Well, again, 0 to 75,000 feet or 0 to 50,000 feet, which was the mandate. Doing that under a minute will suck up a lot of fuel, and you'll probably have like a 300 or 400 mile range max. In ferry mode with drop tanks, you probably have over 2,000 mile range. Who knows? You know, again, it never entered service, so we'll know. But how would it compare? Well, give you an idea. This is the airplane, and the reason why the Arrow was needed, just to touch up on, this had a 2,000 mile range. It had a radar. It was all weather. These were rocket pods, and it had 20 millimeter cannons in the bottom. Now, eventually, this would fire missiles, but at the time, it couldn't guide the missiles. So it mainly relied on using ground radar to detect the bombers. This would go up and find the bombers, pinpoint the bombers with the radar, fly towards them, and then hit them with rockets and cannons, that type of thing, blow up the bombers. And if it did get missiles on it, it needed ground radar to be able to guide those missiles to the bombers. So the problem that you ran into was quite simple. You couldn't, you had to stay within the range of the radar system, which means what's the point of having an airplane with 2,000 mile range if you have to be within a couple of kilometers of the the radar system, you know what I mean? So a new airplane was needed. Now, this is a bit controversial. This is going to play around with the F-35. The problem the RCAF is having with the F-35 now is that it's a stealth airplane, which is cool, but does it meet the requirement to navigate the Arctic? There's extra equipment that needs to be put on the airplane. And with the airframe design, we don't know if it'll actually all fit in there. For example, the CF-18 carries extra extra navigation pods and stuff like that, but it has to hang off the outside of the airplane. So if you have a stealth airplane, you don't want anything hanging off the outside. Well, this had it all in there. It definitely not nowhere near the technology of today, but it had the technology to get the job done. And it was all internal. But again, we never got to that point of the development to see its full potential. So that's the problem we have with the F-35 today, is that will it meet the requirement? If it have to put stuff on the outside of it, well then it kind of voids the idea of stealth, which why pay for stealth if you're not going to use it, right? So I think Canada, again, can design and develop a stealthy version of the Arrow with better visibility, and then you've got the dogfighter that, you got a big airplane that you can just do, with enough room to do anything you want with it. Long ranged, cover the entire country. And let's put it to you this way, some of the Russian airplanes, like a good example of what kind of role this could be playing today with modifications and upgrades is probably like the Su-34 Platypus, which has about an 8,000 mile combat range and about a 14,000 mile ferry range. And this thing, it's kind of an anti-Navy aircraft, where it's an attack aircraft, but it's kind of like taking the Su-27 and crossbreeding it with a like electronics warfare aircraft. Well, this could kind of fit that role too, and still be a role of a super fighter, an interceptor, reconnaissance. It could do it all, even a trainer, if you have two seats, right? That's what it could be today. The lighter aircrafts that are smaller have more limitations. Bigger aircrafts don't necessarily mean more maintenance. It's all about the design. I mean, a stable airframe like this, again, the airplane flew beautifully. It could have been a lot of things for Canadians, and that Canadian pride that went into it. It'd be nice to see something like that again. And I think, rather than, to me, the F-35 too big to fail is more really too complicated to work. I'm not saying it's an amazing airplane, it is, but I think Canada could build something in its own country. If we had a reasonably realistic budget, and use common sense to put it together, kind of the way this was made. There was no test airplane. This thing went right from paper to production, so to speak. They couldn't get it wrong. They had to work out all the problems before they put it together. So that's a very complicated thing. But with today's technology, much more achievable. And there's always something when you put an airplane together that you're gonna miss. You're not gonna know what's gonna go wrong with it until it wheels up. You know what I mean? So so that's why we have test airplanes. But I think Canada should reinstate its own fighter program that completely serves the needs of Canadian sovereignty. That's the way I feel about it. But again, fly-by-wire, droppable weapons bay. Of course, there was probably extra hard points you could store weapons off externally. There was a parachute back here. Obviously, that could also be substitute for radars and what have you. You know, track up to 12 aircrafts at a time, shoot down 8 at a time. All kinds of stuff. This thing, it was, you know, you could remotely fly it, so to speak, from the rear cockpit. All kinds of stuff it could have done. Yeah, it's the big upset was the lost potential, I think. But again, you know, the achievement was quite outstanding, and the fact that people in the government went through great lengths to kind of hide the fact that Canada did achieve something like this, you know, it's just sad. You know, it's just sad. You know, and you know, all the politics and stuff. I think Canadians probably now more than ever probably realize that if we built things like this in our country, the money would stay in the country, and if it stayed in the country, well, hey, you know, even if you go over budget a little bit, hey, at least that money stays back in the country. Kind of like this Dark Sword Armory here. This is made in Canada, you know, and there you go. You know, you can build things competitively in your own country. Outsourcing, I think, is the root of all evil, and but even more than that, bad politics is and bad management is also what leads to the destruction of, you know, genius stuff like this. So anyway, rate, subscribe. Hope you enjoyed. Okay, Avro Arrow versus the F-35. Okay, well, something I know this is kind of going to be kind of a bit of a silly video, but a speculation. Well, first off, I know the F-35 would fly circles around this thing below 50,000 feet. I don't think the F-35 will make it to 75,000 feet. At that altitude, I'm sure the Arrow will probably do better. But again, that's a high altitude, go fast, long range interceptor. But was it long range or was it short range? Well, again, 0 to 75,000 feet or 0 to 50,000 feet, which was the mandate, doing that under a minute will suck up a lot of fuel, and you'll probably have like a 300 or 400 mile range max. In ferry mode with drop tanks, you probably have over 2,000 mile range. Who knows? You know, again, it never entered service, so we'll know. But how would it compare? Well, give you an idea. This is the airplane, and the reason why the Arrow was needed, just to touch up on, this had a 2,000 mile range. It had a radar,